Welcome to this candidates forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Marin County. I'm Susan Stomp, and with us also is Margie Eller, our timekeeper. We'll be collecting questions from the audience and appreciate your printing legibly, having brief questions, and addressing issues applicable to all of the candidates. There are 9 candidates running for one seat with a 6-year term. They are Otis Bruce, Michael Cofino, Beth Jordan, Sheila Lichtblau, Renee Marcel, Thomas McAllister, Nancy McCarthy, Nicole Pantaleo, and David Shane. The candidates have been invited to make opening statements of 1 minute and will begin in alphabetical order with Otis Bruce. Otis?
Yes, good afternoon, Ms. Stump and the Marin League of Women Voters, and the Marin County community and the Marin City community. Thank you all for inviting us to come to this important candidate forum. I'm honored to be one of the 9 candidates here, but I'm most honored about the 25 years plus service that I've extended and put into Marin County community. I've been a deputy DA for over 20 years. I've worked in the DA's office close to 25 years, but I've been in Marin County since 1986. I'm a proud person of advocating on behalf of victims. I've worked many hours in the courts of Marin County, but I've worked many hours in various organizations, communities, from Sausalito to Marin City, all the way to Novato for many years. I'm proud of my work and my service to this community. I've only had one job as a lawyer, and it's been serving the people of Marin County. And I thank you for this opportunity, and I ask sincerely for your vote.
Thank you. The next candidate is Michael Cofino.
Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for having us here today. My name is Mike Cofino, and I work at the Marin County Public Defender's Office. I grew up right over the hill from where we are here in Mill Valley. My mom was a school teacher, and my aunt and uncle ran a bakery called True Confections. Some of you might remember it, on Madrone Street. I went to Tam High. I played sports with a lot of folks from Marin City here. And when I started my legal career, I worked in civil litigation, representing businesses and small business owners and corporations. But for the past 15 years, I've been a public defender, and I'm the only public defender running in this race. If elected, I would be the only judge on Marin's bench who has experience in indigent defense. And I see that as a real social justice issue, because actually Marin is the only one of the Bay Area counties that doesn't have a judge with that background. I think that our system depends equally on prosecutors and defense attorneys to achieve justice, and I believe judges should also be drawn from both groups. So that's why I'm running, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next is Beth Jordan.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate the interest that you're showing in the judicial race. I'm Beth Jordan, and I work in the private sector. I've been practicing law for 30 years. I believe that Marin needs and deserves the best judges, the best qualified judges that are available, and in particular, the type of judges that have the experience that the Marin courts need. Most people don't know that the majority of cases filed in the Superior Court are family law and civil law cases. I have 30 years combined courtroom experience in both of those fields. I've spent 15 years in the San Francisco trying and litigating civil cases, and I've spent the last 15 years practicing in San Rafael, practicing family law, litigating, trying, and even more recently mediating cases for the women and men of Marin County. I'm a certified family law specialist. Throughout my career, I've had the highest legal ratings available based on peer review, and I'm often named a super lawyer. Throughout my career, I've litigated,
Thank you. Next is Sheila Lichtblau.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Women League of Voters, for allowing me this opportunity to speak here about my candidacy. My name is Sheila Lichtblau. There are 12 seats on the Marin County Superior Court bench, one of which is being vacated by respected jurist Faye Diopel. 8 of the remaining seats are held by men. Judge Diopel has been known for her commitment to justice. Of all of the candidates before you, she has endorsed me for her seat. So has respected jurist Beverly Savitt, the first woman on the bench in Marin County history, as well as 12 other current and retired judges, justices, and commissioners. I bring the strongest set of diverse professional and personal experience to the bench. I'm a child of immigrant parents. My father came here from India on an ocean freighter. My mother came here from Puerto Rico. Service has always been important to me. After graduating from UC Berkeley, I worked on human rights issues at the United Nations. After earning my law degree at UC Hastings, I served the disabled and indigent population, and I was the only Spanish-speaking attorney there, and so I served the Latino community there. I later transitioned to a law firm, and I've been at the county counsel's office serving the county and its constituents for the last 10 years. Thank you.
The next is Renee Marcel.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. My name is Renee Marcel. I grew up in a small town, primarily blue collar, and my father abandoned his family, his father abandoned him and dropped out of middle school to support his mother and siblings. And my father enlisted in the service, and after discharge, he became a bread salesman. My mom dropped out of school in the 11th grade. I ended up being the black sheep of the family and the only one who went on to college. I put my way through. Of all of the candidates, I have the most vast experience both personally and professionally. I've had a 12-year career in real estate. I've been a corporate lawyer. I have done over hundreds of bench and jury trials and criminal dispositions and family law for 23 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Thomas McAllister.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I have the most experience at the highest levels in both civil and criminal law, including extensive trial experience in both areas. My wife and I raise our 4 kids here in Marin. I have already served for 15 years as a deputy district attorney, seeking justice for victims of violent crime and fraud, including domestic violence, child abuse, and devastating financial elder abuse. I have also demonstrated a deep commitment to our community in my personal life over many years through meaningful volunteer service at the ground level and above, all to help our youth in many ways. That's why I have by far more endorsements from current Marin County judges than any other candidate up here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nancy McCarthy.
Hi, I'm Nancy McCarthy. Thank you for having me. I am unique among the candidates because I'm the only one who has consistently for 30 years represented parties on both sides of disputes. I have not spent the last 15 or 20 years of my life developing an ideological bias toward one side or the other, a bias that will cause other candidates to be disqualified from hearing many of the cases if they're elected. Consider these factors. The majority of the candidates in this race worked only for the government for the last 10 years, representing only one side. Close to 50% of the candidates represented only defendants, either institutional defendants or huge companies like Goldman Sachs and DHL, most of their civil law careers. On the other hand, I've represented both sides, regular folks, small businesses, and victims of discrimination for 30 years. Regarding integrity and fairness, in one hotly contested divorce case, the opposing party asked the court if she could leave her own attorney and have me, the opposing counsel, help her in the case. People recognized my fair and honest approach, even in difficult matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nicole Pantaleo.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us. My name is Nicole Pantaleo, and I was raised here in Marin. I live in Marin, and I have served to protect this county my entire career. I'm a proud graduate of Terrelonda High School, USC, and UC Hastings College of the Law. My family came here as World War II refugees and founded the Cafe Trieste in San Francisco and in Sausalito. My family taught me the lessons of war and the importance of social justice for all. I've dedicated my life to keeping Marin County safe. I've prosecuted sex offenders and other violent criminals, giving a voice and respect to victims. I have sought alternatives to incarceration for the drug addicted and mentally ill in our community. After years of making tough, life-changing decisions that affect the lives and rights of victims, defendants, and the safety of our community, I'm ready to serve as your judge. I promise to treat all parties with dignity and respect, to be fair to all sides, to find alternatives to incarceration when appropriate, and to ensure that the rule of law protects us all. I humbly ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally is David Shane.
Thank you. I would take this opportunity, and also I'm grateful that the Warriors aren't playing opposite this event. I also want to say I listen to everyone talk, and everyone has a very compelling story. I think mine is different a little bit. I look at myself as kind of an experienced outsider. I practice all over the state of California, including Marin. I try cases on behalf of people who get injured, people who are hurt in elder abuse, people who lose through injury. I represent those kind of people. I go into those kind of houses and represent many, many people who have poor circumstances, and I try to help them out. Second, I'm not a government lawyer. I don't have the backing of the government. I don't represent the government, and I'm independent, and I can do the cases I think need to be done. And then third, I'm neither a public defender nor a DA. While they have awesome credibility and awesome background, there's some bias that they come to the bench with, and that's a concern, I would believe. I think I'm a fresh voice. I'm an experienced outsider, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the questions. We'll rotate the order of the candidates being able to answer a question first and last. Candidates will have 1 minute for answers. We'll start in the following order, and we'll rotate who gets the questions first and last. And the first person to speak will be Michael Cofino. And the question is, what kind of cases come up most often in Marin, and how does your experience relate to that?
Well, the last year for which statistics are available identified something like 41,000 criminal cases and around 3,500 civil cases. But most of those 41,000 are traffic infractions and other kinds of infractions. So the split is just about equal between civil and criminal. And the judges are kind of split equally as well. There are 6 judges that do criminal and 6 that do civil. And my experience is in both of those areas. I mean, I worked in civil litigation, as I said before, for 5 years. I represented Autodesk. I represented the Business Software Alliance. But I also represented a guy who was an asylum seeker from Chile who was facing persecution in his home country. And that's what led me into practicing criminal law, which I've done for the past 15 years. And what public defenders do is they make sure that people's constitutional rights are respected. I'm the only candidate running for office who has devoted his career to protecting constitutional rights. And I think as a judge, that is good preparation, because that's what judges are assigned to do as well. Make sure that the Constitution is respected, that everybody who comes in the courtroom has their due process rights permitted as well. So that's what I do as a judge.
Thank you. Next will be Beth.
Thank you. Actually, I take issue with that. The statistics clearly show that the majority of cases filed in the Marin Court are civil and family law cases, and a lot of those family law cases involve domestic violence. I believe that with my experience in civil litigation and family law, and deep experience that I have, I would fill a void in the court at this point. I've represented men and women in the child custody and divorce cases that come before the court, where they're in some of the most difficult times of their lives. And I've learned a lot about how important it is for individuals to be heard by the court and to have a voice. I can assure you that I would approach being a judge with respect for all, giving everyone a voice to be heard, and listening carefully, weighing the evidence, and applying the law to the facts of the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee?
Actually, there are.
Oh, I'm sorry. It should be Sheila. I'm sorry. I overstepped.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you. You know, in 2014 and similarly in 2015, there were approximately only 10 to 11 felony jury trials that were held. We have 6 criminal departments. That's not a lot of felony jury trials. The majority of cases that are heard are really hearings and civil matters that are in either civil, family, probate, conservatorship type hearings. And so, there's a question as to really what type of a judge you need, someone with civil experience or someone with criminal experience. At the county counsel's office, where I've been serving for the county for the last 10 years, we have the opportunity to work in so many different departments: probate, conservatorship. We actually go down and do criminal hearings and civil. And that's why I think I am the best candidate here for the position, because I have a broad-based background, not only in serving just about every single department, but also in my prior work working for the poor, the indigent, working for small businesses, large businesses. It gives me the opportunity to serve everybody and ensure an equal voice in the courtroom for everybody.
Thank you. Now, Renee.
Thank you. There were, this past 2014, 2015, 44,000 traffic and minor infraction cases. There were 1,900 felonies. There were 1,900 approximately family law cases, and the rest were civil. My experience swings over all of those areas of law. I've done the criminal, and primarily I have done criminal misdemeanors. In fact, only criminal misdemeanors. And I have done the jury trials. I've also got the family law experience, as I said earlier, of 24 years. And criminal felonies I have not done, but I have worked in the area making briefs and so forth. I believe that my experience will round out the bench perfectly, because I've had experience in guardianships, conservatorships, juvenile, family law, and criminal. So thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Thomas.
Thank you. I've had extensive experience within the DA's office and in civil law in many areas: violent crime, insurance fraud, domestic violence, real estate fraud in the DA's office, in civil, contracts, real estate, complex torts, securities fraud, and even white-collar criminal defense. But more importantly, during my service as a DA, that's where most of the justice in the county is done, in our office. There are thousands of cases that are referred to our office every year. Only about half of them are filed, because we sit around and we discuss the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, due process, and decide, do we have enough to prove this case? Have the defendant's rights been honored? This is where the lofty ideals of our society, that's where the rubber meets the road. And I've had that experience, which is extensive within my own office, in making decisions that are similar to what the judges make every day.
Thank you. Nancy?
I believe that what you did 15 or 20 years ago is not as significant as what you've done every day for 30 years of your career. I have not done criminal law, and I'm concerned that we have 6 ex-prosecutors as judges already, and I don't think we need another prosecutor on the bench, and I am very concerned about the disqualifications that are had by people who are on the opposite side of the criminal defense or of the prosecutor attorneys that are going to become judges. I've had every single day, not mixed, not 20 years ago, not 30 years ago, experience with dealing with a variety of cases, people who are selling their businesses to their employees, employers who have various legal disputes within the context of their contracts. I've represented people who've been discriminated against, individuals. I've represented employers who've been falsely accused of discrimination every single day. I have selected my clients. I haven't been given them by government attorneys. They come to me
Thank you.
because they want me. Thank you.
Next is Nicole.
Thank you. So I contacted the court before this debate because I think as a judge and a candidate, it's important to actually obtain the facts before you talk about something and have an opinion about it. And that's something that you need to do as a judge, right? So when I contacted the court, I wanted to know what type of cases does the court have. And the court got back to me from July 2013 to June 2014. There's a total of 6,081 cases that were filed that are in civil, family law, probate, and small claims. For felonies, there's almost 2,000. For juvenile delinquency, there's 247. And for misdemeanors and infraction, there's 44,243 cases. And what that means is that the caseload is generally balanced when you take out traffic court. And it's important that you have a judge who's experienced inside of the courtroom, that knows the evidence code, that knows procedure, and that knows how to run a courtroom, because that's what people need. And they look for someone who is fair and balanced and has experience in making tough decisions that profoundly affect people's lives in this community. And I have done that for my entire career.
Thank you. Next is David.
Yes. Every case has one common denominator, and that is it involves people. People having some sort of dispute among landlord-tenant, a criminal dispute where somebody breaks the law, parties get divorced, someone gets injured. They all involve people. And for judges, most people don't care about who a judge is at all until they're before a judge. And then the judge makes a decision, it could be the most important decision of their lives, and it affects them. Then they care. So it's important to have a judge who has a background with people and understand where disputes come from, maybe where crime comes from, what motivates someone to get involved, and then also to apply the facts and the law to the case. I have that background. I started out as a teacher. I've been a lawyer for 33 years. I work with people all the time with all sorts of disputes in every way, shape, and form. Knowing people, understanding people, knowing the law, applying the law, that's what makes a good judge. And that's the kind of case that every case is. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Otis is the final respondent to this question.
Thank you, Ms. Stump. Well, the Marin County Superior Court, which is the trial court in the state of California, their case filing statistics go from the fiscal month of July to June every year. So the statistics from July 14 to July 15 are 51 appellate cases, 4,234 civil cases, 1,604 family law, 1,203 felonies, about 353 juvenile, 173 mental health, 34,000 misdemeanors and infractions, and 300 plus probate, and 741 small claims. Those are the actual statistics from the Superior Court. I've done something in every one of those cases. I've been a lawyer for 25 years. I've done child and spousal support. I appeared in family court. I've done contempt hearings. I've done LPS, conservatorship hearings. I've done mental health competency hearings. I've worked in juvenile court. I've appeared in probate court, working with the probate investigators. I've worked in the mental health court and the drug court for 25 years total.
Thank you. The next question will be, could all of you please summarize any non-legal work that you've done for the community? How have you contributed outside the law? And we'll start with Beth.
Thank you. Well, actually, I have to say that a large part of my contributions have been in the context of the legal community. I served the Marin County Bar Association as president, and I spent 5 years, 6 years all told, as an officer and director of that organization. I also was appointed 2 years ago to the Family Law Advisory Commission of the State Bar's Board of Legal Specialization. So I have deep roots in the legal community. I have, however, also served the wider Marin community. I served 6 years as an officer and trustee of the Board of Trustees of the Marin School, and I served as an officer or on the board of directors of the Belvedere Tiburon Child Care Center. I've also, again, getting back a little bit to the legal issues, I've volunteered a tremendous amount of my time to pro bono work, to representing self-represented litigants at the pro per count. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sheila.
Yes, in addition to the legal work that I've done, I spend a fair amount of time serving the Latino community and also serving my children's schools. I brought my 2 kids here with me today. I have served as a parent, been a parent teacher, part of their classrooms for about 4 years, both of them each a couple years, helping to coordinate in their classrooms. I've also currently serving as the class treasurer for my son's third grade, and I volunteer quite a bit with the Parent Teachers Association. But the work that I do with the Latino community is primarily associated with the Association of Latino Marin Attorneys, and we call that ALMA, which in Spanish means soul, and we consider ourselves to have a lot of ALMA. In that regard, one of the main things we do is mentor Latino law students and Latino students, because we really want to make sure that they have equal opportunities to thrive in the environment here. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee?
Thank you. I was in Rotary for 8 years, 4 in Tierra Linda, 4 in Sausalito, right here. I received 2 awards for the Pro Bono Award from Legal Aid for over 200 hours. I worked for 1.5 years full-time for the low-income and no-income members of the community at the Family Law Center. I've also worked on numerous boards. I've been in numerous, too many to repeat here, of organizations. I also developed my own nonprofit to fight human trafficking awareness locally and combating human trafficking, working with at-risk and people who have been trafficked, giving them 9-month training, education, and
You could finish your sentence.
okay, training, education, room and board.
Thank you. Thomas?
Thank you. I serve our youth in many ways. I have, at the ground level, coached and mentored kids in sports and academics for many, many years. I have served on boards that run those programs. And more than that, for each of those programs, I make sure that there is true, fair, and equal access to all of those programs. I personally go out into communities that are disadvantaged and welcome them to the programs. And we do more than that. We don't just tell them that we're here. We make sure that we strip away any financial barriers that may exist. We provide bilingual assistance at the practices and games to make sure that they can communicate with us. We also provide equipment to anybody that needs it. Because I have this theory that if we get kids together on the same team, working for the same goal and cheering for each other, then maybe we can kind of get in there before prejudice and bias set in.
Thank you. Thank you. Nancy?
You asked about the non-legal work, so I will start with that. I worked to return and to maintain the buck funds in Marin County when that litigation was a major issue. I worked to return Marin General Hospital to community control for over 20 years and was finally successful, never giving up. I served on the Marin Healthcare District Board for 8 years. I wrote legislation to save 70 public hospitals from corporate takeover. I lobbied it myself and had it passed unanimously by the legislature as urgency legislation. For 16 years, I oversaw the expenditure of $500 million for public bonds on all of the schools to refurbish them in Marin County, and I continue that today. I worked for legal aid, and I've received awards for my work. I served as a judge pro tem and as a hearing officer for fee disputes. I served as on the board of the Marin County Bar Association, and I worked on ballot measures, including for genetically modified organisms, to eliminate them.
Thank you. Nicole?
I grew up here, and I've been volunteering and fundraising for numerous causes since I can remember, since I was a child, starting all the way back in 2nd and 3rd grade. I'm sure those of you who have kids, you have kids that are doing those readathons and all those bake sales. That's how it all starts. It starts when you're a child here in Marin County, giving of your time and of yourself. And now, throughout my career, I've been very devoted to various causes. I'm an active member of Rotary Club in San Rafael. We work hard to provide scholarships, and I've donated money from my own pocketbook for that cause because I believe in it. I was lucky enough to be a recipient of a scholarship from Rotary Club, and when I was sworn in, I gave it back and passed it forward because that's what we all should be doing. And I also have worked with Seroptimus in International of Marin to help fight human trafficking in our community and to provide as well the Live Your Dream Award, which provides a scholarship here.
Thank you.
And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is David.
Yeah, I'm a father of 6 kids, so I spend a lot of my time actually as a part-time unpaid Uber driver driving around the community. But on a serious note, I think I give in 2 different ways. One is through the schools and the coaching that I do in the local area. I've coached at Kent Middle School on for the basketball team. I've been a CYO coach for St. Sebastian's. I've coached soccer at Ross Valley. I'm a much better coach than I am athlete, actually, but I can do it. I've also worked in the schools and volunteer in the schools. So on a local level, I do that to help out the community where I live. I also work with poor people quite a bit. That's what my practice is primarily poor people. I do it every day, and I'm in their homes, and they welcome the fact that they have someone who actually...
Oh, it isn't? Okay. Sorry.
They welcome someone in their home who actually can help them, not with legal disputes, but they have someone who knows the system and can help them out. And I do that every day on various tasks, whatever it might be. But it's not legal, but it is helpful, and I think it's giving back to the community.
Thank you. Otis?
Yes, thank you. 1 minute would not be long enough to summarize the true and love I've had for this community since 1986. I'm the only candidate sitting at this panel here that's given my life to service to this community. Started in 1988 when I came here in 1986, but I started serving in 1988. I received the Martin Luther King Humanitarian of the Year for my work with young people in 1994. Last year, I received the Marin County Supervisor of the Year Award for my ability to try to bring diversity and inclusion to opportunities to students and volunteers. I've been the president of Marin County Bar Association in 2011, the first African-American ethnic minority in the 77-year history of this county. I've been on the California Bar Legal Executive Committee. I'm in a part of the Ends of Courts for Marin, Napa, Sonoma. I've been on the College of Marin Foundation, the Friends of Margaret Johnson Senior Citizen Center in Marin City. I've coached football in Novato, Pop Warner. I've been on the Community Foundation Partnership Committee and the North Bay Children's Center.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you. Well, besides practicing law, I've kind of passed my time outside of the courtroom in 2 areas. One would be writing and teaching, and the other is in construction and farming. And I taught a semester-long law class at Alliant International University in San Francisco to graduate students in psychology, kind of introducing them to legal concepts and the law and society ideas. I was also a textbook editor until a couple of years ago for Congressional Quarterly Press in Washington, D.C., which publishes law and political science textbooks. So I'd work with the authors on revising their texts. I've been a freelance journalist. I've written legal articles for The Recorder, and I've volunteered with Habitat for Humanity building low-income housing. I've also volunteered as a worker on organic farms, both in the U.S. and in Europe, and with Tabletop Farm in Point Reyes Station. Aaron Wilder is the farmer, and he's here today to support me. So I've done a wide variety of construction, roofing, all kinds of labor work in addition to my writing and my editing and practicing law.
Thank you. The next question, the first person to answer will be Sheila. And this is about diversity and fairness. And it says, going forward, how will you be fair towards people of color? And they're recommending an action plan.
Okay. So for me, diversity and fairness is something that is very close to my heart. As I said, my father is from India, my mother is from Puerto Rico. Both of them face their own challenges coming here. For me, when I started my legal career, I actually spent 5 years representing indigent and disabled people of color in Richmond, California. And I did that primarily serving the Latino community. So for me, diversity and fairness is something that is very important, making sure that people have an equal voice in the courtroom. Justice Sonia Sotomayor has said that mastery of the law is insufficient without an understanding as to how it affects each and every person. So going forward, it is my pledge to make sure that every single person have an equal voice in the courtroom. That means making sure that there is cultural competency. We have a growing Latino population. Do you have judges like me who speak Spanish? Is there a familiar face like myself in the courtroom to people of color? That is what I will do as judge.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Renee?
I have parented 2 children of color, a couple of black children, during their teenage years, which was very difficult. I also married an immigrant and have 2 multiracial children. And I volunteered at Glide Church for 10 years, and I have worked with many alcoholics and addicts of every color. An action plan. Part of what my thought is to create a program whereby we demystify the courts. There's so many people who do not understand what's happening to them, or really what the jurisdiction or the reach of power that courts have. So part of what I want to do is to create that understanding among all people.
Thank you. Next is Thomas.
Thank you. I've been immersed in diversity my whole life, and I know it may not look like it to you when you first look at me, but I have aunts, first cousins, nephews, nieces, in-laws, and my own child from the following backgrounds: Chinese, Korean, Indian, African American, Guatemalan, Puerto Rican, and Russian. We adopted my own child from Russia, one of the 4 that I have, when she was 1 year old. And I don't know what more commitment you can make to somebody who is not from your own background than to welcome them into your life forever. So I feel like I already have that commitment. I understand that as a judge, you cannot be wedded to one side or one group or have an agenda. You have to treat everybody fairly. You have to assess the facts and the law, and you have to approach it that way, because if you don't, that's when the whole system becomes unfair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy?
My entire career has been about representing people who have suffered from discrimination. It is what I do all the time, not just in pro bono work, but every day. I represented an African American postal worker who actually delivered my mail and picked me as his lawyer, who was fired because he asked a white woman out in a grocery store in Marin County, and he had his uniform on, and it was after hours. I went to his union, we got his job back, and then we took it all the way to the EEOC in order to get his rights restored. I represent women who had a woman who had a child, an interracial child. She was denied the right to have lactation at her work site so she could take care of her other child who was born at 4 pounds and 13 ounces. I've represented people in legal aid who were Latinos and people from Vietnam who were denied their wages simply because the employer felt that they could get away with it. I understand what it takes in order to get people their rights.
Thank you. Nicole?
So I just mentioned in my opening that my family came here as World War II refugees. My grandfather fought the Nazis as a partisan fighter in northern Italy, and later on my family found themselves trapped behind the Iron Curtain. And I was raised hearing stories about what World War II was like and what it was like to have no rights, what happened when they were stuck behind communism. And I really have a deep appreciation for the Constitution of the United States and for due process and what it means to be in our court system, how important it is that a judge ensures and protects all rights of all citizens and all people that come into this court, regardless of their background, their color, their creed, or what faith that they may have. Because those values were instilled in me by my family from when I was a child. That's how I was raised. And I think that as a judge, it's critical that you have someone with those values at their core. And one of the most important things as far as the plan is that a judge does outreach into all sectors of this community and listens. A judge needs to listen to everyone.
Thank you. David?
I practice diversity every day. I do it. And this is the way I do that is that my clients come from very diverse backgrounds. And I think I stand alone for the candidates that I go to people's houses, I explore their conditions, and I know where they come from. I've sat in houses in Richmond that were full of rats. I could hear them running around. And we sued the landlord saying, you can't have rats like this. You might wonder why they stayed there. They have no money to move anywhere. I represent elder abuse. 2 weeks ago, I was in Louisiana in a shack where there were 6 people living there. One relative had stolen all the money from everybody else, and they had no money. I sat with them in that community, sat there to understand them. I've worked with discrimination in the workplace, suing, let's say, for Home Depot for abuse that they accused occurred in their workplace when they discriminated against an African American. I've been doing this my entire living. I represented a Chinese person, similar to what Nancy talked about, where they just said, because you don't speak the language, we can just kind of yank you around and not treat you fairly. Every day I do that. That background means that when I go into a courtroom, sit as a judge, I know what's going on. I know that what's the circumstances that lead people to where they are in the court.
Thank you. Otis?
Yes, I am a grandson of a sharecropper from Mississippi. I came to Marin County. I had no friends, no connections, no nothing here. And I immediately start trying to instill hope in young people from diverse backgrounds, from the rich kids, some of the kids who go to Marin Catholic, Branson, Marin Academy, to TAM, to San Rafael, to Terra Linda. I've worked in all those schools and mentored all kids in all those schools. Also in Richmond, California, Vallejo, the neighbors of Marin County. I'm supported by people in the restorative justice community. DJ Pierce, who's the leader of the substance and abuse prevention. Many of the probation officers are supporting me because they see my work and passion in the courtroom. I'm endorsed by Judge Stevens and Judge Smith, Michael Pritchard, Dr. Fran White, Dr. Lois Moore, Heidi Kuhn, who is the founder of Roots of Peace. Those people understand as a prosecutor, I've always helped myself out. From the day I started work here as a prosecutor with a conscience, I understand diversity and inclusion.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, everybody running for judge promises to treat people with respect, but I already do that every day in my job as a public defender when I treat my clients, who can be difficult people, some of them, as intelligent people who deserve to understand the legal predicament that they're in. And as a public defender, you learn to communicate and gain the trust of a wide variety of litigants, the same kinds of people who are going to come before you as a judge. You have to be able to communicate with people from all cultures, the mentally ill, the disabled, and non-English speakers. I also learned from my clients at firsthand how racial bias affects them. I achieved justice for Chaka Grayson, who was a man in Marin City who was shot at 16 times by a sheriff's deputy right outside this building here. And, you know, my understanding of that case in the background indicated to me that if he had been a housewife from Ross, the police officer would not have shot at his fleeing vehicle 16 times. Now, racial profiling is now illegal in California. I think that my background gives me some better understanding that it truly exists in our society.
Thank you. Beth?
Thank you. I grew up in New York, and I have been enmeshed with people of color from the very beginning. I also represent people of color regularly. I don't believe that obviously that they should be treated any differently. But I'm also aware that in recent the last couple of years, you know, we've had incidents in the news that have absolutely shocked the conscience with regard to race. And I think that requires us to understand that, you know, bias is not gone, it's not over, and we absolutely must be more vigilant than ever. Particularly judges and people in positions of power have to be vigilant about being unbiased and taking the appropriate training, sensitivity courses, getting involved in the community, and making sure that we're aware of those biases that we don't even know that we have. I believe that in my representation of a wide variety of people and in the people I know, I can treat everyone with respect and the dignity that they deserve and that they are absolutely entitled to.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Renee. What is the biggest issue facing the Marin Superior Court today, and why? How would you propose addressing that issue?
The largest issue, as I see it, facing the Superior Court is trust, unfortunately, particularly when it comes to family law matters. It's not everybody or every judge, but unfortunately, in family law matters, there's always this perceived winner and there's a perceived loser. If you've been paying attention at all, you would know about the several audits that have occurred over the last 20 years of the Family Law Department. Only Marin and Sacramento have been audited these times. There's been special reports, and there have been the rise of a committee called Judicial Excellence. What my proposal is that we work together, we meaning the judicial officers, work together to try to demystify the court system and to try to bring them in and to assist them in understanding and what they can do in order to change their circumstances.
Thank you. Thomas?
Thank you. I think one of the biggest challenge that we face as a community and in the courts is how to get people to stop reoffending after they've been convicted of a crime. And fortunately, the Marin courts are already making great strides in that respect. There are lots of collaborative courts within the court system that a lot of people just don't know about. There's adult drug court, which addresses people who have serious substance abuse problems. There is Star Court, which tries to help people who have severe mental illnesses. And then even on the civil side, there are family court programs in place. But all of those could be improved. The other thing that we need to do is really try more restorative justice. And I think there's really only one court that is doing that right now, and that's the youth court. That's a court that is actually trying to get people to look inside and reform themselves, and then also restore what they've done to the community. Those are the most important issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy?
One of the biggest issues is the fact that you can't get motions heard in civil court. It takes 2, sometimes 3 months to get a motion heard when you only have 1 year to try a case. That is a problem. And one of the reasons is because most of the judges that are sitting now on the civil bench are people who are ex-prosecutors who weren't born and raised and dealt with civil law all their life, which is sophisticated and it's a little bit different than criminal law. And why are we faced with having so many criminal judges sitting in the civil bench? And that's because most of the judges are ex-prosecutors. And since there's concerns about them being disqualified when they serve in the criminal division by the opposite side, i.e. the public defender, they then put them into the civil division. This is the problem. There are too many camps there, and too many camps where you've got government lawyers who've only represented one side. They're bumped out, disqualified from representing one side or another in a criminal matter, and now you've got them all sitting on the civil bench. And when they sit in the civil bench, they don't have the time and ability to get it all done.
Thank you. Nicole?
Yes, actually, one of the biggest real issues for the court has been budget. The governor has cut the budget of the Marin County Court by over $500,000 consistently for quite a few years now. Again, we will be cut by $500,000 this year. What does that mean for this community? It means that when we want to fund an additional mental health court, we can't. The money isn't there. When we want to try and fund an alternative justice court or restorative justice court to deal with the homeless that keep coming in and are unfortunately really involved with alcohol and drug abuse and committing misdemeanors and constantly in and out of the criminal justice system, there's nowhere to put them because we have a serious budget issue. That is one of the top issues that is facing this court, and that is something that is a reality because in order to take care of alternative justice programs, we need money.
Thank you. David?
I think there's two issues before the court. One is the judges should be out there more often in the community educating people. There's too many people of color who are arrested, too many people of color who appear before the courts, and the judges can take an active role in trying to educate more people what they need to do to make better choices. And the judges can get off their platforms where they are and come into the community and spread the word that there's more that they can do to prevent bad choices. The second thing is, on the civil perspective, is to get the cases done more economically, quicker, and without the expense. There's concern about expense. Money is being cut all the time. There's concern about backlog. That happens all the time. And so what the court should be doing is to encourage alternate resolutions to civil matters, where you sit down and they have some sort of mediator, a settlement judge, or another lawyer sit down and try to get cases settled before they take up court time. And that's something that's very, very possible, and it's been done. When I started practicing 25 years ago, or I guess it was 33 years ago, it took 5 years to get to trial. There's improvements made, but there can be more improvements.
Thank you. Otis?
The number one issue facing the Marin County Superior Court is the budget issue. And what do you do with less? The current judges are very competent and very skilled judges. I will bring to the table management skills. The judges meet in the back and they figure out how to administer the courts, administer justice, and facilitate access to justice and equity among all the people who have to appear in the courtroom. I have the extensive experience with the alternative justice court, restorative justice community, community justice community, to be able to handle and talk to these judges and work with these judges in the back to help facilitate saving you taxpayers money without the long costs of your money going to trials and courts. I have the experience in case management. I have the experience on many executive boards in the community where I work with many budgets. I have the experience in working with the youth court and Don Carney, going 10 years plus back to look at ways to keep our juveniles out of the court system and divert them to alternative justice thing. That's the issue that's facing the court budget and how to save the taxpayer money.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, I think the biggest problem here in Marin is that most defendants who come through our criminal court system are indigent, and yet we don't have a single judge who ever worked in indigent defense. As I said before, of the 9 Bay Area counties, Marin is the only county that lacks a judge with that background. And I think that public confidence in the courts is compromised when you have judges, as we do, staffing every felony department who spent their careers as prosecutors rather than from one or the other sides of the equation. And I've had clients and their families express to me skepticism about the legitimacy of our courts when every judge comes from a prosecutor background. So I think that what I add and what electing me will do is allow Marin to join every other county in recognizing that a well-rounded bench includes judges who came from both the prosecution side and the defense side, because that's ultimately the premise of our justice system. And to have no judge from the defense side really is at odds with the fundamental premise of our legal system. And so that's why I think I would be a good candidate.
Thank you. Beth?
Thank you. Actually, everybody's raised some really good issues that are problematic for the court, and I agree that the budget is probably one of the largest, because with budget cuts, a number of the staff of at the county have been cut in the clerk's office, which makes things more difficult, more time-consuming for people to get things filed. There's also been a problem with respect to court reporters being cut, as well as interpreters. You have to wait longer for an interpreter. And all those things are vital to providing equal access. I also agree that there should be more outreach. I think that judges in general should be community leaders and should demystify the court and allow people to understand what goes on in the court and how it works. The final thing, though, that I see is, which is something I think we can do something about in this election, and that's balance on the court. There are presently 12 judges, 8 of them are men, with Judge Fadiopoulos stepping down. There's a chance that there will be 9 of them as men, and I think with a county of 51% women, we absolutely need a woman judge on the bench.
Thank you. Sheila?
Sure. I think the biggest challenge is how do we ensure that everyone has an equal voice in the courtroom, especially when we have limited resources and budget problems. And I'll start off piggybacking on Beth Jordan's comment. Not only do we have a situation where we would have 9 men and 3 women on the bench, but there's never, ever in the history of Marin County Superior Court been a woman of color on the bench. I would actually change history, and I would invite you to help me do that. Ensuring an equal voice in the courtroom, to me that means looking at a couple different demographics here. We have a growing aging population. It's the largest population of aging people in any county in the state. We need to work with our self-help legal services organization to try and create forms, to try and create resources to actually reach out to seniors. We also have a growing Latino population. It's going to be 25%. There are 25% of the school children today are Latino, and we need to find ways to actually create equal access for everybody, including Latinos.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Tom. Do you have an explanation or opinion on ethnic disparity in Marin County jails?
I don't think any of us have the answer to that. I think that's a huge societal problem that cannot be fixed by the court system or by a single judge. What we have to do is we have to get together as a society, as I try to do in my own small way through my community service, to address these problems by getting people together at the earliest ages and making sure that they understand each other, that they communicate with each other, and that they participate as a community together. That's how we're going to stop this, not by trying to fix it from the bench. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nancy.
I worked with Sheriff Doyle for numerous years in the Sheriff's Oversight Committee, and we worked very hard to reach out to members of the community who had complaints about the Sheriff's Department. And in that environment, which I don't even think the committee sort of ended at one point in time, and I'm not quite sure why, because I thought it was a really very effective committee. That's where you find the problems. You find the problems when people come in and say, I feel as if I was treated differently. I feel as if I was treated badly. And we had many people, a large number of people of color, who came in and made these complaints, and we worked them out. And I believe that that is a good protocol, and I think it should be instituted again so that something does not become a problem with the authorities, but you're able to deal with it, let people understand that you're hearing their voice and that you're taking action.
Thank you. Nicole?
One thing that really bothers me is that there's a lot of stereotypes, particularly about Marin City, that somehow this community has the highest crime rate. That's not true. When you look at the statistics that were released, I believe a year or two ago, over half of the arrests and bookings into the Marin County Jail come out of San Rafael. And that's because San Rafael has the highest population of people in general in the county of Marin. And bookings into the Marin County Jail are from all of the agencies, and the number one arrest in the Marin County Jail is for DUIs. So we have to look at what is the perceived reality, what is perception and what is reality, and what is the role of a judge. Well, the role of a judge is to ensure that the constitutional rights and due process of every single person, no matter who it is, no matter what their background is protected when they're in court, and that you have to ensure that you are listening to both sides and that everyone is getting a fair shake when they are before you in that particular courtroom.
Thank you. David?
I think the number one problem with who's filling up the jails is drug-related crimes, drug-related instances. And we as a society, and judges included, have to take steps to try to reduce the drug abuse. And the way to do that is, one, to have preventative programs. Figure out what, and this is not, I'm not an expert, I'm just a lawyer. I can't tell you, here's how you would do it. But you want to have people think about it, people who actually have knowledge and understanding, what they can do to prevent drug abuse. Second of all, you want to have alternative programs. Just jailing somebody because of a drug abuse doesn't help, really. It just stops for a second one person. We want to do a societal improvement. Again, you want people who have expertise to do that, to figure out alternative programs that would work. You want to get counseling, you want to have preventative measures. That's what needs to be done. What we, as a judge, we can be mindful of this problem. We can take steps to form committees, ask people to do it, and also work together as a bench to try to figure out sentencing that makes sense to try to reduce that problem.
Thank you. Otis?
As a judge, I would be thoughtful, I would exercise integrity, be fair, and I do believe in justice for all. There is no perception, there is reality. Marin County is a very unique community, but Marin County is behind the other 9 counties in their way they look at a lot of issues, and that's why we are working on those issues, from the nonprofits to the courts, now to the judges. Now, I would say I've been a prosecutor for close to 25 years. I've trained some people in my office. I mentor people in my office on how to be sensitive to people who are witnesses, victims, and defendants, how to handle yourself. I've worked as a prosecutor with a conscience from day one. I will be a judge with a conscience who understand what's happening in the community, understand that Richmond and Vallejo citizens and criminals impact our judicial system. Not necessarily Marin City or the Canal. Some of the rich kids get caught up in a lot of drugs and drug abuse, prescription drug issues, and DUIs. Alcohol is the #1 problem. I will be a fair judge, understand being conscious
Thank
to
you.
ethnicity issues.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you. I think it's important for judges and also everybody who works in the criminal justice system to be aware of the existence of unconscious bias when it comes to 2 things that happen at the outset of a case. One is the setting of bail, and the other is what happens at the end of a criminal case, which is sentencing. And there have been social science studies that have shown that judges, despite their best intentions, harbor unconscious bias toward people of color and people of minority cultures. So as a judge, I think that the way to combat that is to try to be as aware of the possibility as you can be. And as a public defender, I represent so many different kinds of people from so many different cultures and economic classes and ethnicities that I think I've already become sensitized to the need to make sure that I'm treating everybody equally and that everybody's treated equally under the law. And you know, the other way that racial bias plays out is among police officers. And I think judges in our county need to have a more possibly skeptical attitude toward the claims of police officers and treat them just like any other witness when they're evaluating credibility as far as what happened during an arrest.
Thank you. Beth?
Yeah, I agree that judges can certainly ensure that everyone that comes before them is given the constitutional protections that they need, and they can, as I indicated before, I think we need to be vigilant about bias and being aware of bias and have continued training. And as attorneys, some of our continuing legal education requires us to take classes in recognizing bias, and they're really remarkably helpful. So I would certainly advocate for that. I do believe, however, that the problem with the disparity in the jails starts long before we ever get to the courts. And I think that there's a significant problem with respect to the police. I agree with Michael that, they should be treated as any other witnesses. And it's a societal problem that really needs to be dealt with on all levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila?
Sure. One of the things I'm really proud about here in Marin County is that we have a whole host of different types of courts, alternatives to incarceration. And I would really like to see us use those courts on a regular basis where we can to really turn the lives of people who are just starting, maybe just some misdemeanor offenses, to actually see what we can do to make sure they don't go down a path where incarceration ends up being the answer. And one of the things that I'm so proud about is the restorative justice courts that we have. Restorative justice is a concept that actually was very popular in South Africa during the reconciliation process. It's really how you bring victims and perpetrators together to have them understand what happened and to turn people's lives around. So as a judge, I would give energy and focus on restorative justice courts in getting people to actually make meaningful changes in their lives so that we have people of color who are not incarcerated in the numbers that they are today.
Thank you. Renee?
Thank you. I believe that the ethnic disparity that starts, for example, in Marin County, is because of the isolation that we have of the Latino community in the canal primarily, and the isolation of Marin City. The separation of school districts by ethnic differences is also a huge problem, and I think also contributes to the problems that we have in our jails. In San Quentin, the people there isolate themselves by their ethnicity. My children have been pulled over for driving while black. The disparate treatment of people by color is really horrible. For example, coke, the rich man's drug, is treated very differently than the crack, which is the poor man's drug. Thank you.
The next question will be answered first by Nancy. And that question is, what causes backlogs of cases, and what creative approaches can judges use to reduce the backlog? Nancy?
Yes. What causes backlogs is the fact that there are not enough people or judge time and judges who are assigned to civil matters. That's where the backlog is. It's all in the civil department. And that is why I would make a big difference, because I do civil work and I do divorce work. I do family law work. I would be able to take on that choice, that work. Additionally, what causes backlogs is when judges are recused. When you wind up getting litigants who feel as if a judge has one ideological bent or another, they'll bounce that judge. And that's the problem. Right now, one of the creative ways that it's being dealt with, and I am very much a participant and have a hearing set up for next week, I'm a discovery facilitator. So when there are discovery disputes, which is one of the issues that create the backlogs, they ask lawyers to help out. One thing I think would also be great is if we had a discovery department like they have in San Francisco, and that would eliminate the need for some of the discovery disputes taking up all the other judges' times.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nicole?
Yes, our judges right now are split fairly evenly between the criminal departments and the civil departments. And having practiced for years actually inside of the courtrooms and in the criminal departments, and those judges that do have criminal backgrounds, I have not seen them be challenged on a continuous basis by either side, by the prosecution or by the defense. Why? Because they know what they're doing, and because they've been fair, and they let both sides really litigate their cases. Ironically, unfortunately, one of the judges who was sent by Sacramento was challenged a lot when he first came, and he was a civil judge. He was from a civil background. So sometimes, that really doesn't quite work out the way you think it's going to. It really what matters is someone's experience level in the courtroom and what they are bringing. And one of the solutions that a judge can do is have a lot of pretrial conferences and really work with the parties to resolve the cases and cut down the amount of litigation. That's how you can help resolve the backlog and not allow so many continuances by the parties.
Thank you. David?
Well, the cause of the backlog is very simple. It's money. There's not enough money to have more judges, more courtrooms, more available facilities. So that's not going to be fixed anytime soon. So it's incumbent upon the judiciary to do something about that. Criminal cases get priority because that's by law. They have a right to a speedy trial. So civil cases is where some of the backlog occurs. And Marin's pretty good about moving cases forward. I mean, I practice here. I don't have a lot of big complaints about Marin. The cases move. You get trial dates. It does move forward. But what can you do to make it better? One is you have, as Nancy talked about, discovery referees, people who are not judges who will hear discovery disputes. Discovery is where the parties in litigation have disputes over how to conduct a litigation. Two, you can have mediators have cases, automatic assignment to mediators, so that the cases are resolved outside the courtroom. Three, you could have attorneys come in to volunteer. And it's an honor for an attorney to sit pro tem and hear a case. There's plenty of attorneys who welcome the opportunity, so you invite volunteers in. So those are ways that can make the courts more effective.
Thank you. Otis.
With respect to the backlog of cases, start with my career as a prosecutor. I've supervised and worked in every criminal courtroom in the county. I've supervised and worked and trained and had positive influence on quite a few of my colleagues who are under my years of experience. And one thing I've done in the courtroom, every day I go to the courtroom, I've been on the calendar many hours. I've done over 40 plus jury trials. Probably done more jury trials than anybody. Probably Michael Cofino and I have done more jury trials than anybody on this table. But the reality is that it's the judge obligation is to manage the courtroom. Discovery, referees, settlement conferences, listen to arguments presented by the lawyers, look at the type of case it is, look at the bail issues. There's many ways that a judge manages a courtroom. I have those experiences. I have that experiences. Every day I go to court, I watch what the judge does. I watch how every judge that I appear before handles his courtroom and his counter. And as a prosecutor, I try to facilitate the expedition of some of the cases that I appear on right now.
Thank you. Michael.
Well, I started my criminal defense career in Lake County, and when I got to Marin in, I think it was 2003, I was really alarmed at how long it took to resolve even the simplest misdemeanor case. Because in Lake County, we could resolve the cases on the spot if the defendant wanted to, and if not, we would set it for trial. In Marin, they had this Byzantine system where in order to settle a case, you had to communicate with this kind of Wizard of Oz-like figure who was hidden away in the DA's office. It was impossible to get offers on settling cases because the DA and court didn't have discretion to do it. But judges can get involved in helping to speed along the resolution of cases. In order to do that, you need a judge who knows the value of a case in relation to other similar cases that judge has seen in his or her career. You can't have that knowledge of the value of a case unless you've spent years and years, as I have, handling criminal cases and seeing how they're resolved. You need to know where in the continuum of seriousness a particular case falls in order to help the lawyers resolve the case without going to trial. And some people who just don't have that experience will not get there for decades. Folks who have worked in the system know the value of a case and can help the lawyers bargain in the shadow of the law to resolve a case before it has to go to court.
Thank you. Beth?
Thank you. Well, I certainly agree that a lot of the backlog is caused by budget cuts. And the problem is that, as I mentioned, about a third of the court staff has been cut, and a lot of the judges are actually writing their own opinions and having to do their own research, which takes a lot of time. What the civil side has done, though, I think has been very good because we've had a lot of development of settlement conferences. Most cases, by the way, do settle. About 90% of all cases filed end up settling. The court has instituted a number of settlement conference programs that are specifically designed to try to settle cases earlier rather than later. Particularly in the family law department, we all volunteer our time to do what we call bench bar settlement conferences. We get the parties together, there's a panel, and most of those cases do end up settling. There also has been an additional use of discovery facilitators and referees, which also expedites the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila?
In Marin County Superior Court, we have an issue where, as we've all discussed, we have a budget problem. And so what that means is even though there are enough judgeships and enough judges, the staff just isn't there. So the judges have to write their own opinions. I can tell you that as an attorney at the county counsel's office, we don't have minions. We write our own briefs, we write our own pleadings, and that's something I would certainly be comfortable with. The other thing that at the Superior Court they've tried to do is to institute settlement conferences, as Beth was saying. And settlement conferences really require judges who have experience in knowing how to settle, knowing how to mediate cases. I'm proud to say that I'm a mediator right now. I serve as a panel mediator for the U.S. District Court, and I've had training in that. It requires that you really listen to both parties. It requires a real understanding. It requires humanity to be able to try and get both sides together to settle their disputes. And that's one of the ways in which we can all work together to eliminate the backlog.
Thank you. Renee?
Piggybacking on what Sheila just said, mediation is critical. I am, I believe, the only candidate here before you who has had advanced training in mediation and have been doing mediation for over 20 years. And most recently, since 2008, have had advanced training. I'm involved in collaborative practice and in integrated mediation cases. But there is yet another problem. The prosecutor's office is apparently paid federal money if they bring certain cases to justice. For example, domestic violence cases and otherwise. I recall sitting with Judge Duffy about 20 years ago, and he had no power to make the case go away. The prosecutors are the ones who have the power to either drop their case or not. Too many foolish cases are being tried in Marin County, and this should stop.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. So, I've been a lawyer for 23 years, and I've done 60 trials in civil and criminal law, over 1,000 court proceedings. I participated in mediations and arbitrations. So I know what this issue is about on both sides, civil and criminal law. I think in civil, the judges need to set harder deadlines and make the attorneys honor them. And then they also need to give them more opportunity at early and meaningful mediation and arbitration. And they need to work towards eliminating the animosity between the parties, which causes a lot of the delay. On the criminal side, we need to find earlier alternatives to incarceration, which would relieve a lot of pressure on the system. The judges could hold earlier judicial pretrial conferences. They could take a more active role in getting the two sides together to resolve the cases. And our office, the Marin County DA's office, has an excellent program, which is an expediter, to ensure fairness in the system. I think that the court could also do that with their judicial pretrial program.
Thank you. That we're ending the questions now. I can't hear you. We're ending the questions now, but the candidates have an opportunity to make a closing statement of 1 minute in reverse alphabetical order. So we'll be starting with David Shane and working to the other end of the table. David?
It's one minute, you said?
1 minute.
Okay, all right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience today. I grew up in a nice environment down in Los Angeles. I have Jewish parents. My parents said I could be whatever I wanted to be when I grew up, as long as it was a doctor or lawyer. And I wanted to be a teacher and was very disappointed that my parents really didn't support that. Even though they're very good parents and everything, they didn't support my being a teacher. I became a lawyer instead. As a lawyer, I felt I abandoned what I liked about being a teacher, which was to be a pillar of the community, to be a voice of the community, and a leader in the community. I stopped doing that. I became a lawyer and did a lot of stuff as a lawyer, a lot of really good litigation. These Federal Express air bills, I helped write them. I represented Federal Express for 15 years and wrote them so well that now there's no litigation because they're pretty much unenforceable. They're totally enforceable. No one can challenge them. In the last 10 years, I've been doing people work, working for people to help them. I know people. I know communities. I know families. I think that's very helpful as a judge. I would welcome the opportunity to be a judge because once again, I could be in my teaching life where I'd be a pillar of the community, a voice of the community, and a leader of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole?
No one person can affect more people's lives directly in our system of government than a judge. The decisions that a judge makes not only affects the parties involved, but oftentimes the entire community. I was raised here with Marin County values by this community and by my family. I spent my career protecting this county and prosecuting some of the most difficult cases imaginable. Sex offenders, domestic batters, gangs, and other violent criminals. These cases require a high level of ethics, protection of constitutional rights, litigation skills inside of the courtroom, extremely sound judgment, and fairness. But most of all, they require that you care profoundly about people. My experience and upbringing has uniquely prepared me to serve as a fair, experienced, well-tempered, and respectful judge. I care so much about this county, and I love this place. I humbly ask for your support and your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nancy?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today to all of you. This race is about what we as candidates chose to do in our careers for the last 15 or 20 years. I chose who I would represent and who I would not represent. I was not required to represent one side or the other, right or wrong, like many of the other candidates who are given clients and told that that's who you represent, whether they're right or wrong. My clients selected me, and I selected them. And if it meant less income to me because I felt that person that was asking for my assistance was wrong and shouldn't prevail, I made the difficult decision not to take that client. Today, the majority of the judges in Marin County are ex-prosecutors, and when criminal cases are the minority, that shouldn't be the way it works. Marin doesn't need another judge who is going to be bumped or disqualified due to an ideological bias. I don't have that. I've always worked for everyone.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. Again, I'm Tom McAllister. My wife and I have been married for 22 years. We have 4 kids in college, high school, middle school, and grade school. We understand the issues that face our community. For 15 years as a deputy district attorney, I have sought justice for the most vulnerable victims in our society. Before that, I had a long career as a civil trial attorney in many complex areas of the law. To the League of Women Voters who sponsored this today, we currently have 4 women serving as judges on the Marin Superior Court. 2 of those endorse me above all the other candidates. You can find out why by going to my website, which is tommcallister.com. That's 2 M's, 2 C's, and 2 L's, because I cannot possibly tell you in 1 minute all about myself. But there you will learn from others about who I am and why so many judges and others in our community support me as your next judge.
Thank you. Renee?
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters. Of all of the candidates, I am the only one who has the broad experience and a fair amount of it in each area of the law in the cases that most regularly come before the Marin County Superior Court. I have worked with the most vulnerable people, the people who have no means, working at the Family Law Center and working in my own private practice as a family law lawyer. I have received countless endorsements from people all over the county. You could find that at my website, my materials over there. You know, it's pretty hard to get an endorsement from a criminal judge when you're not practicing in criminal court. So, you know, I don't have as many endorsements as my neighbor here, but the judges don't know me. But the community knows me, and you will see by my website all of the civic work that I've done that I haven't had time to even tell you. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth? Sheila, I'm sorry. Sheila.
Thank you. Thank you. The way I see it, there are qualities that make a good judge: experience, integrity and professionalism, and diversity of professional and personal experience. I have 23 years of experience. I'm the only candidate here to have argued in front of the California Supreme Court. I've spent many years representing the poor, the disabled. I was a partner at a nationwide law firm, the only female partner at the time. I was elevated a partner ahead of schedule. And then I spent the last 10 years working for the county of Marin and its constituents. I have integrity and professionalism. I have some of my biggest supporters who are actually currently opposing me in cases and who have opposed me in the past. I have people who, all over the legal community, as part of the appointment process, had nothing but positive comments to say about me. And in terms of diversity of professional and personal history, there's no one else here who has actually represented nonprofits, the poor and disabled, Fortune 500 companies, the government, including the county and the state, other than myself. It is for that reason that I am the only candidate here to be supported by the retiring judge, Faye Diopel. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth?
Thank you. I have spent 30 years in and around the courtroom. I've litigated and tried all different kinds of cases, from the complex to the more simple. I primarily focused on complex pharmaceutical, toxic tort, and product liability cases in the city. I was lead trial counsel for Abbott Laboratories, and I've spent the last 15 years representing individual men and women in the county. I've done large cases, small cases. I've done cases involving single plaintiffs and single defendants, and cases involving multiple parties and class actions. I also am proud to have the endorsement of several judicial officers and a large part of the Marin legal community. As I indicated, I served as president of the Bar Association for Marin, and throughout my career in the private sector, I have not had cases assigned to me either, and I've had to earn the trust and respect of each and every individual who walks in my door, and I've done that very successfully. I would consider it an honor and a privilege to serve the county as a judge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you. Well, the most difficult thing about being a judge, I think, is having to make a difficult decision where the outcome is not clear. And so when you're looking for a candidate in a judge, you want somebody who has some experience making those kinds of tough and consequential decisions. There's no lawyer who makes tougher or more consequential decisions than a criminal defense lawyer. I have had to make a decision whether to call my client to testify in a homicide case in which the defense was self-defense. Even a misdemeanor case where somebody pleads guilty can have significant consequences, especially in immigration for many people. So, public defenders like judges have experience knowing the importance of due process, acting independently and regardless of public opinion, making sure that they're making decisions based on fairness and not based on prejudice or prejudgment or bias, and also doing something that judges are called upon to do every day, which is evaluating whether a particular person is really genuine and is a fit candidate for rehabilitation when they say that they are. So CafinoForJudge.com is my website, and I thank you for your time and ask for your vote.
Thank you. Otis?
Yes, well, thank you, League of Women Voters and the audience and the Marin community at large for this historic opportunity to sit before you. I believe in the mission statement of the Superior Court to ensure fair and equal access to justice and serve the public with dignity and respect. I would add that the judge should follow the rule of law. And for 25 years, I've worked in the Marin County Counsel's office. I've started from as a law clerk and worked my way to this county to be a senior deputy district attorney. I came to this county not having any friends, any connection whatsoever, but I committed myself to service above self, which is a principle of the Rotary Club. I've served in advocating and arguing for victims. I represent the interests of justice and due process. The prosecutor is the ultimate influence in the courtroom. The prosecutor is. And the prosecutor has to be somebody that's reasonable, fair, and understand the rule of law and watches the whole courtroom. I extended myself beyond being a typical prosecutor. I'm a public interest lawyer who just happened to serve as a prosecutor, and I represent the people of the County of Marin with my heart for 25 years.
Thank you. So this ends the candidate forum. For more information, you may want to go to the League's voteredge.org website and enter your street address and zip code, where you will be able to see your own ballot with links to the candidates, issues, ballot measures, and information about the voting process itself. We also have important election resource material on our website at marinlwv.org. The League of Women Voters welcomes both men and women members, and we hope you will join us in our important work. Thank you again to all the participants in this debate, and to Margie Eller, the timekeeper, and to you, the voters, for joining us.
Good job.
I'm fine.